which is a very good thing. Where are you currently in the United States?
I'm in New York.
New York, it's nice. How is life in New York these days?
New York is great. There's a good crypto community out here. There's a good science community out here. It's New York, so there's a high density of people. So when we host events or want to get people together for something, there's a lot of people who are interested in that thing just by
Mhm.
the nature of there being a lot of people here. So, I mean, if you try and do something say in San Francisco, there's only like I think 700,000 people, whereas in New York, you're in the several millions. So, everything you do just sort of by default has probably 10x the number of opportunity. So it's good to be here.
Is San Francisco so small? 700,000 inhabitants.
So yeah, um, 800,000, but yeah, that order
Wow.
of
Wow.
magnitude. Yeah,
I never looked it up. I always thought San Francisco is 3, 4, 5 million something, but it's just
yeah,
800,000. It's tiny.
yeah.
I
It's
think
it's smaller.
hmm?
It's not a big city. I mean, all these cities are relatively, I mean, their geography is relatively small. And I think that's actually makes what makes them kind of good because it creates density.
Yeah.
And so it gives people who want to be there a lot of opportunity. And I think to get like a good state, you need like a lot of people close to each other because it basically makes things more efficient for a lot of things. Like if you need to get somewhere or you need to buy something or you want to try something new, like a new restaurant, like it's easy to get to. Whereas like in some suburbia, everything's sort of far apart. You need a car, and everything. You get less natural interactions happening.
I mean, this is basically one of my first questions. You have I think, a Stanford cap, if I saw it right.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you did your undergraduate program and PhD at the University of Stanford. And I always wondered why you then moved to New York. New York. I always thought that Stanford, I mean, from the European perspective, I'm here in Vienna, Austria.
Uh,
Stanford is basically the holy grail of entrepreneurship these days.
True, it is. It is. But I think I just wanted to, I'd been there for undergrad, I'd been there for PhD. I grew up in the Bay Area as well. And so I think just I wanted to try. I've always liked New York as well. I had a lot of friends out here and the culture seemed interesting. And so I just wanted to move out here for a little bit.
I'm curious, tell me a little bit more about your story in the Bay Area. You mentioned that you grew up close to Stanford and then studies there. How was it?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Santa Cruz. I love Santa Cruz. It's great. There's the beach and the university there, so there's a good academic environment. It's a college town, and it's also beautiful. It's right by the ocean, so you have the beaches and the redwoods and the fog in the morning. I was really into like science fairs as a kid. I was into just sort of normal kid stuff. Um, and I think it was nice actually in Santa Cruz because there wasn't as much stuff going on. So you had time to just sort of do your thing and not get distracted by all the other bells and whistles that occur. So I think Santa Cruz in that way to grow up there was wonderful. And then I went to undergrad at Stanford and I studied computer science. I always just been really interested in computers and what they could do, and also the newness of the field. I think I tend to gravitate towards fields that are more developing and less ossified. And computer science has changed so much even over the last 10 years. It went from you know being a tool for audit like programming and the ephemeralization uh, of programs, anything you just it being mostly about programming, then sort of transitioning into like the core part being like connectivity and like how people communicate and the things that are enabled by that, and now into the new wave which is around like AI And so like each of these fields is very different, but all sort of enabled by computer science. And I mean, you could break it down further, but I think, what is computer science, or what is the interesting part about computer science is always changing. I find that really fascinating. And yeah, so you have to sort of keep your eye on the ball here. It's not like a field where you can sort of learn something and stick with it for too long. You have to always be thinking about what's the next thing.
Yeah, the world is moving incredibly fast. But
Exactly.
before we move into the world of computer science, artificial intelligence, and blockchain technology, let me ask you one question, one
Mhm.
final question to California. I mean, a picture, I'm close to 50 now, and I grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s of the last century. And the picture from California that I have in mind is beautiful beaches, surfing, skateboarding. And I always wondered how people get motivated to study other things than surfing. I mean, is there not a lot of distraction in California? I always thought it's just 1 year, it's full year of summer every year.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much time you can spend on a beach before before you kind of get sunburned. And
Mm.
I think a beach is fun on the weekend sometimes, but practically speaking, I mean, I think it's just dependent on what you enjoy. If someone enjoys going out and being on the beach, that's good for them. If someone enjoys working, that's right for them. And it's kind of, I mean, even in New York, like you don't go out all the time. You go out sometimes, and the
Yeah.
rest of the times you do like what you're passionate about, whatever that is. And it's probably the same thing in Santa Cruz. Like, you don't yeah, it's like people in Vienna don't just live at the opera all the time or eat. They
Yeah,
they
good picture,
they
good picture.
they create they do other things as well. And another thing that's kind of funny is like all these cities are very similar. London and New York, while being different, also share a ton of similarity. And so independent of where you are, or I mean, all these major cities, Paris, I mean, they all have their H&M, they all have their things that make them quite similar to each other. Uh, and then, of course, there's the other X percentage that makes them different from each other. But whatever your passion is, I think you can do it anywhere. And well, there's a lot of people in the crypto community who are nomadic, and so that can be good too. But I feel like that's so hard to do and run a company at the same time just for practical reasons. So haven't done that yet.
Yeah, that's true. But sometimes stereotypical pictures are fun. It's fun to play around with.
Yeah.
um, on your LinkedIn profile, I saw that you transitioned from artificial intelligence and natural language processing to blockchain. What motivated you to shift towards the crypto community?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was the ideals of um the crypto community of crypto that attracted me to it. Like crypto is in many ways a democratizing force. So what that means is like it becomes more powerful the more people that are engaged with it. So, whereas AI is in many ways a centralizing force, like sort of the more powerful that one individual model is, um, the better off it is. So you have this interesting dichotomy where like, we have this race towards AI becoming this centralizing power and Web3 becoming this power thing of democratization. And so I was curious to explore that area. And I don't think the two are totally different. Like we are going to be incorporating more AI into what we're doing. But I was also just a personal reason. I wanted to switch over from being I had this good idea in that I've had for a while around data and the blockchain, and using that to create high quality data sets. And in AI there was still a lot happening, but I had this new idea and it was time to explore that.
Let me ask you one question to this, what you mentioned before, democratization versus centralization. Did I understand it right? That you
Yeah.
said blockchain technology basically is bound to bring more democracy to the systems, while artificial intelligence moves towards the other side, centralization. Can you dive a little bit deeper into these two concepts?
Yeah. So like when like um the more nodes that are independently thinking create a stronger network, and each person sort of putting their opinion on, for creating a data set, say, the more eyes you have on something, each person is like thinking for themselves and figuring out which piece of data should or shouldn't be in it, or which token should or shouldn't have a high price. And so you get many, many different viewpoints. Whereas what I found with like AI is, there are a couple different models out there for sure. So there's like OpenAI, there's Llama, there's Anthropic and stuff like that. But I think you could probably put the number of AI models that exist on one hand. And so, or maybe, and maybe that will change in the future. I'm not sure. Maybe there will be sort of a Cambrian explosion of models. And I think that is a very big possibility. And I think that is our hope for, if we want to have a safe AI deployment. It's kind of my opinion that the best way to do that is to have thousands of AI models that exist, and each person has the best one. I think the problems become when there's only one or two, and those aren't well distributed, and too much power is centralized in those individual models or people that control those models. But if there are thousands of models, the relative benefit, it sort of checks. It's kind of like the how government works. So you don't. It's not so much the power that one branch has, but it's the power that sort of goes unchecked. And in the same way, if you have multiple models that exist, um, each person has one, then the relative power is zero, and so then it's sort of safe. Um, but if one person has something that's like infinitely better than the other ones, then that can be dangerous. And I think those are sort of the two options about how you could either go like very regulated and AI, one person has this very safe one that's sort of cruddy, or you can have this sort of more unregulated approach where every person has an AI model that is very good, and then each one sort of checks each other. And so I don't know, this was sort of how I thought about it. And so I thought, and I think that I had already like done all the things I wanted to do in AI. I mean, my PhD in AI was actually on how to generate programs using AI. So we built a system that can automatically take natural language and convert it into like JavaScript, a type of JavaScript language, and then also take that language and computer language and convert it into a computer program, like a UI. And the idea was you could be able to specify a program using natural language, and then automatically sort of have like a pre-built model or pre-built program. And it's really cool because I think the idea was interesting, and to me that was like how to democratize programming. So right now programming is done using JavaScript or TypeScript or Haskell, or one of these languages. And to be honest, like they're not that hard to learn, but you could also imagine a world in the future that it's easier to build a program than it is today. Like there's still a lot of debugging, there's still a lot of thinking around how this change interacts with another change. And a lot of that stuff was kind of like plumbing in many ways. Like you have to connect the button to the UI, and then the UI makes a call to the server, and then the server makes a call to the database, and then you reverse the process to get it back. And a lot of that was sort of like very routine, almost like how a plumber connects the sink to main line and or the sewage, and it wasn't like overly complicated. Now that's not to say that like that's all of computer science, right? So like computer science is also a field of understanding cryptography, and that's a very different thing. But for like many of the use cases of how people program, that was sort of like what people were doing. And it seemed like that you could get a computer to automate a lot of those tasks. So that was sort of like what my research was on.
Ah, that's great. That's great. You mentioned that too much power in one hand. It reminded me of the Lord of the Ring, where one ring is
Ah,
built
yes.
to bind them all. Do you really see this danger with artificial intelligence? That
I think I was more worried about it. I think now that we have XAI and Anthropic and obviously OpenAI, and I think we're going to see a lot of more open source. I mean, Facebook has done a lot to open source their models. So I don't think I hope, at least let me rephrase that. I hope it doesn't end that way. We'll see if OpenAI is doing a very, very good job of like releasing new stuff. But I don't know. I think it'll be like a like sort of like a something that you just sort of engage with, and um you'll have a lot of choices. And I'm trying to it's like a data, I mean, like it'll be like sort of like a database where you can use Postgres, you can use MySQL, you can use Redis, and each one will maybe be slightly different, but at the end of the day you sort of will be able to use any of them, and it won't be that big of a deal.
Yeah, let's see how the situation will be in Europe when we start regulating, if we are still allowed to use all of them at the same time or not restricted. You moved then to blockchain technology. And whenever I think about blockchain technology, the first thing that pops up in my mind is Bitcoin and Ethereum. But it's not what you're doing, if I understood your CV right. You are more drawn to decentralized science. Can
Yeah,
you please
yeah,
go
I'm
ahead?
happy to explain. So, I mean, Bitcoin was the first one. So that came out many, many, many years ago. And it was also the easiest and simplest use case. So the idea is like we are going to create a unified database, and then that database is going to keep track of values, and the values are just going to correlate to money. So you'll have one Bitcoin, I have one Bitcoin, and I'll give you a little bit, and then that database will keep track of it. And that's sort of all you can do with it. You can do a little bit more, but that's basically the main use case. And then Ethereum came along and said, okay, well, wouldn't it be cool, instead of just having this unified database, what if we could like program on top of it, and you could start to deploy these things called smart contracts. So you can use Solidity to program little DNS type things, or games or other things on top of it. And then from that, then you could start to do more complicated things called DeFi, which is like decentralized finance, and or which is like, okay, instead of using traditional rails for banking or doing financial stuff, what if we use these smart contracts uh, to do parts of it? And I think that was all very good, but the problem was is that it didn't create value. No, the types of value that were created were a bit more intangible. So like when you and I swap two tokens, no actual value is like being created. So like, but I was looking into ways of like, okay, how can actual value be accrued and sort of deposited onto a blockchain? And then when we swap tokens, we're actually like doing something real, like real information and real data is coming online. So like everyone who's like doing all this stuff with DeFi, there is some sort of efficiencies there, but with any sort of finance, it always seems a little bit zero sum, in the sense that, okay, I take it and then you swap it and then swap it, and then you leverage, and then it liquidates, and all this sort of stuff is automated. But like at the end of the day, like the amount of value that was actually being created was the same. And what really excites me about this new thing called decentralized science, or DeSci, is the idea that I'm testing something out and I'm seeing how it works. And then I'm depositing that on blockchain. And then other people are looking at it and evaluating that data point and seeing if it's good data or bad data, or if it's biased or if it's unbiased. And what's cool is, like, in the same way, like when an invention is created, you're getting something that's actually creating value. And so DeSci is like that's what sort of exciting. That's what the idea is, like, okay, wouldn't it be neat if you could use this sort of distributed ledger technology and all the infrastructure that had built up for Ethereum and from blockchain, and repurpose it, instead of for DeFi, and repurpose it more towards academics and towards science.
How would you define decentralized science for someone who is absolutely not familiar with that space?
I would define decentralized science as the ability for multiple people to work on a project and to be rewarded for it, um, as opposed to the traditional science, where you have to be part of the ivory tower and be part of academia, uh, and be rewarded fixed on a fixed income basis. So you be paid a salary. Here, you're rewarded with, tokens for the science that you do, and you don't need to be part of a university. Whereas in traditional science, you're paid a salary, and you have to be admitted into the clan before you're able to contribute. So it opens up science to a lot more people.
How would that look in real life? Can you give us an example of a decentralized science project? Can you walk us through?
Yeah, so you still need somebody to start the project. So there are people. I mean, there's projects that are coming up with classifications for plants. So people are collecting plant specimens from around the world, and they sort of take a picture and classify it, and then they're creating this sort of ontology of plants. And then anytime somebody looks at it, they get like an NFT every time, that rewards them as being the first to discover this, and they name it, and you can actually track who found it first, because like when you find it, you're like posting it on the blockchain, and that has like a time and a date, and then you're able to create this like large database of plants or mushrooms. And then if someone else wants to purchase, if someone else finds that very valuable, they can purchase it down the road. Other people are doing things like drug discovery.
Mhm.
So people are testing out how CBD affects epilepsy. And each time someone posts, they're doing this where each time someone posts their experience with it, they with the drug, they post it, and then if the data is very useful, and then that data set is able to be sold to a drug company, then everyone who contributes data to that data set is able to get rewarded for it.
How does it work in practice? Um, when you mentioned this CBD project, so people participate in the study basically, and whenever they contribute data to the study in a database or something, then it's recorded. And further down the road, when this data package is purchased by a pharma company, it automatically redistributes the proceeds to everybody who participated in that particular study. But I think it's probably a very small study, so it's one piece of the puzzle. How would it work with large? When we look at the entire, you mentioned drug discovery. When we look at the entire drug discovery value chain from the first research somewhere in a lab up to market access. Do you think this decentralized science approach is applicable in all steps of the process, or do you see particularly one step where you say, that's it?
Yeah, so I think in the future, the way I see this is going is anytime somebody contributes to a project, they get tokens.
Mhm.
So it could be like, oh, here is a proposed binding point for a protein. You get one token out of like you allocate 1 million projects for the token. And anytime you do any type of action, you get like a little bit of token to reward you for it. So you might get tokens for coming up with the idea. You get tokens for recruiting people. You get tokens for writing a little program. You get tokens for analyzing the data. You get tokens for verifying the data. You get tokens for finding a place to publish it. You get tokens for like, and this will all be laid out at the outset of the project in sort of the founding documents of who gets what, depending on what they do. So it's all sort of it's like each project will have like a constitution where it can't be changed, and it'll say like, look, all the people who come out in the idea phase get 10%.
Mhm.
All the people that contribute to the data get 30%. All the people that contribute to the analysis get X%. All the people that do write up, all the people that do go to market, all the people that, and so basically you'll sort of have like a company that is allocates certain shares to different people. Maybe the PI gets a certain percentage, the other people get a certain, you know what I mean? In the same way, like a CEO gets a certain percentage, and there'll be like a board of directors, and you'll basically have like the same sort of corporate governance that exists for building a company for different types of science projects. And maybe it'll vary based on the type of projects. Like there'll be some bigger projects that require more complex governance, but then there'll also be some sort of smaller projects that are more easy. Like say I'm doing a volcano experiment, like a
Mhm.
baking soda and vinegar. I don't need such a complicated corporate governance. Maybe just like, hey, whoever like replicates this experiment is awarded some number of tokens. And
Uh,
I think in the future, like we're still figuring this part out, but uh that sort of stuff will be like you'll sort of like go to the website and you'll click like one, two, or three options. And then you can be like, okay, cool. Like I choose like option A for how I want this project to be run, or I choose option B and I modify some certain things, or I choose option C. And like how it runs will be very standard, but you'll have some sort of ability to tweak it, but you won't have to like think about it per se. And then there'll be like marketplaces for everything. Like, oh, I need a data marketplace. I'm just gonna like, here's my project, here's my protocol. Anyone who wants to run this experiment can do it. I need a data analysis marketplace. Okay, here's my data. Uh, run the tests to calculate the p-value or the r-value or the statistics. So you'll have an expert in statistics who knows how to run certain packages, or is really good with R, or is really good with AI to analyze the data. And they'll sort of do that. So every part will be a little bit more segmented. One of the things that's weird about science is like each scientist has to do so much. Like, I mean, as a PhD student, you have to be a good writer, you have to be a good programmer, you have to analyze data. And I think, that's fine, but you don't, I think you could also segment that out, and each person can, you could just be focused a little bit more in one field, and create like a stronger overall economy when you have specialization in labor.
yeah, definitely. I think when you look at basic research, alone making data more accessible is especially in drug discovery, drug development, is a value by itself. I think the academic world, when I look at it from the outside, is pretty well organized already. Once a project leaves the academic world towards more a commercialization process, it's pretty much a mess. For example, tech transfer offices with their, especially here in Europe, with their different expectations of how a license deal could look like. It's really messy. Do you see with your decentralized science approach a benefit also in this area at the intersection between universities, research organizations, and the space where venture capitalists come in, that we can do something with blockchain technology there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I see DeSci as hosting different types of projects than traditional science, than university science. I think there will be a bit of a specialization in DeSci for example, if you need to do a particle accelerator, that's probably not like a great thing for decentralized science, because that does specialize in, that requires like a lot of specialization, a lot of upfront costs. Um, Whereas other things that are more longitudinal are better. So if you wanted to do, if you needed people to collect weather samples from around the world, then this is better for DeSci, where you need to figure out an incentive mechanism for people to contribute. Um, and It'll be interesting to see. I mean, it also like DeSci. I hope DeSci is able to uh, make the sort of human process of having to negotiate for each tech transfer thing less needed, because like when you start the project, the IP is already sort of bundled into it, and then it just sort of like, you don't have to like negotiate with the university. It's just sort of there already. Like when you start the project, it's wrapped in this IP wrapper that anyone could be able to buy a part of it. And so you don't have to like go through this like long, tedious process of going back and forth. Just it's on the market, and the market decides the value, and then you can buy or sell as much of it as you want. You can, maybe there's like a lot of liquidity there, so you can exit that market quickly if you want, or buy more. And it just like reduces the transaction costs of this sort of stuff. And that maybe like an example would be like like self-publishing. Like before, you had to like go through all the process of getting a publisher for things, and you'd have to like negotiate with them, how much is it worth, how much is it not worth. And today, like if you're on Amazon book, I forget what it's called, like you can basically self-publish on Amazon. So you can use tools that exist to take the Word document that you've written up and put it into an ebook, and then upload it to Amazon, and then anyone can buy it, and that you set the price. And so, you give tools to the creator to be able to set the price for their intellectual work, and let people choose, and not have all these middlemen determine and extract value.
Yeah, what about the quality then?
I mean, the quality is a great question. The quality is determined. The quality can increase for two reasons, I think. One is you have better tools that will create that allow for creating better quality content. And then secondly, you have more content being created. So with more things, typically the top 10% will be of higher quality, not always, but sometimes. And then lastly, I think things like AI are going to change how we think about quality, because now quality, the process of going back to the book analogy, like now you can have the AI proofread and do a very similar job as an editor would have done previously. I mean, I've used it a lot. Open ChatGPT, you read, can you reread this or check it for whatever? And it does a really, really pretty good job. And I think the same thing will happen for science. Like you can check to make sure that your equations are correct, or you can check to make sure that everything you've written makes sense within the context of existing related work. Or you can use AI to check proofreading, or if you've missed any sources, or the same things that a human would do. So basically, like the tools, whether they be normal tools or AI enabled tools, will be good enough to determine that, to make the quality higher. But it is a good question.
I wonder where we are heading to. I mean, when the internet started somewhere in the 90s, it was a revelation, for example, buying books. I grew up in Austria, rural area, mountains. There was one bookstore in the city. And whenever I had the idea, I wanted an English book. So it's German speaking here. And the bookshop owner was not willing to find it somewhere in the world and invest an afternoon for basically making a minor revenue with a kid like me. I didn't get the book. Then came Amazon, and it opened the world. the internet evolved, and it was really great to get access to the world's library, to get access to all the information in the world. But somehow, I think in the last 5 years or 6 years, there is a twist. It's a lot more published today than I ever saw. But when you look at Amazon, for example, there are so many summaries of books currently self-published online that whenever I want to find a book, I get a long list of summaries of this book. Whereas I don't want it. And I wonder with science, when there is now ChatGPT, I imagine that also scientists probably use ChatGPT to produce more content. Is there really no risk that we just republish and reproduce the same amount of information that we already have and make new information harder to find? Or is this just not really a problem?
I don't think it'll be an issue. I think new data is always going to be coming on chain or on AI online for AI. So you're always going to be feeding new information into the system, and that is going to. I mean, look at humans, like right, like you could make the same argument about humans that, with all these humans, like why are we getting smarter? Because like what's changing, right? But we sort of do compound our knowledge, and I actually see no reason why it would be any different for AIs. So AIs will learn to collect data either through a human intermediary or something like Optimus from Tesla that is able to pipette, and it too will be able to collect data and learn from it, and so I don't think we'll just be regurgitating the same thing that the data set was collected in 2023. And if anything, I think it will probably like rapidly increasing the amount of data that we're able to collect. So because things will just like right now, humans are slow and they don't do it as quickly. Whereas like the AI, when it starts to collect and compound information, is like if they give ChatGPT memory and the ability to sort of have I would say like a secondary, like sort of like a caching unit where like everything is stored primarily in like the model, but maybe it has some sort of memory that is more like a RAM or a working memory or like a pen and paper sort of thing. Then it'll be able to add more data to its knowledge base, and I think it will go very quickly.
Yeah, ChatGPT currently has the memory of a goldfish, I fear. I was just wondering about the dynamics in academic research and publishing. So, looking at the pre-internet world, I think it was really difficult to get something published. When kids started writing, nobody cared about it. They had to finish school, go to university, become friends with a professor there, and then usually they recommended them to some scientific journals. And when their peers said, okay, it's a great piece of art that you wrote or a great piece of science, somewhere it got published, and everything else just didn't leave the desk of the person who wrote the piece. Now with the internet and with ChatGPT, basically you can feed anything you want into this machine. How do you see the dynamic in the academic world changing?
Because of AI or because of blockchain?
Both, because of the general dynamic that we have. On one hand, this advancement in artificial intelligence, where basically ChatGPT and similar models pick everything up, and on the other hand, with this more centralized approach, where you try then, it looks for me like a little bit backloaded, and you try to organize it again.
Yeah. So I think what will happen is like each person will be each person who's doing science will be like a PI, so a principal investigator. So what that means is like um instead of having to hire graduate students or having to hire lab assistants or techs, lab techs, like the AI will handle all of that up until a point. So so you'll just be like, oh, I want to test this out. AI, instead of telling ChatGPT like generate 30 jokes, you'll be like, hey, ChatGPT, generate 30 different science experiments, and then I can send you a link. I did a basic version of this for like a volcano. So the idea was what would it look like for a AI-driven project, AI-driven science project? And I said, hey, ChatGPT, come up with a list of science experiments I could do with baking soda and vinegar. And it said like, oh, you can study physics, you can study chemistry, you can study biology. And I said, all right, let's do physics. And it said, okay. And then I said like, generate some hypotheses. And it said like determining the ratio of baking soda and vinegar, and like we're gonna try and figure out how these two interact. And then I said, okay, like write up a methods. And it said, okay, sure. Uh, get this amount of baking soda, get a volcano, measure how much volume is produced with each of these. And then it said, okay, now I said, okay, make a form. And it said, okay, here's the form you need to fill out after you do the experiment. And I said, okay, cool. I filled out the form. Here's one data or two data points that I got. Analyze this data. And it said, okay, sure. Here's the write-up on how it is. So it actually like did the entire process of like doing the science. And then it made sense on first pass. Now, does that generalize to all sorts of science and for this like very very basic one? Can you then extrapolate that to doing a research project in mathematics or in physics or in medicine? Maybe not now, but maybe in the future. But I think the collecting of the data will still be needed to be done in the real world for some time. I mean, like, and that's where the incentive models are going to be important to incentivize people. Like, what's in it for me to collect data for this research project? Like, I need to be paid in some way, and so keeping track of who does what and how that person is rewarded is still going to be an important part I think for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. Otherwise, I mean, would there be an alternative to rewarding people to motivate them to participate? I mean, for the long term, I know I understand that some philanthropic approaches work, but at the end of the day, I think everybody has to pay their bills. Or do you see a complete shift also in that approach? I mean, some people say we are entering a new economic area. Do you see that coming without money?
Uh, Probably things will change.
Mm.
Uh, or people will probably just like find new things to do is the if I had to guess. If we come back in 10 years, um people will have different jobs, and the jobs that are sort of can be automated easily, people won't do those as much. 80% of those people will have, say you are a copywriter or something, and they'll still be like, a couple people, but most of those people won't be doing that. And they'll have found new jobs as prompt engineers or AI artists or things that still haven't been done. Now, the one caveat would be if AI is able to do everything, then I think sort of all bets are off. If anything that a human can do can be done better by an AI, it raises the question of like, what's the purpose of putting the human in the loop? Um, so then if that's the case, then what I previously said is wrong. And then we're sort of in unknown territory.
Do you see a possibility to enter such an unknown territory?
Oh yeah,
That
definitely. Absolutely.
really,
Yeah.
when we talk about science, and I mean, wouldn't it make decentralized science then obsolete?
I mean, I think it would make a lot of things obsolete. I don't think it's just decentralized science. I mean, it makes everything obsolete.
So the world, I mean, just let's play around a little bit with this thought. So there's a possibility, if I understood you right, that artificial intelligence replaces humans in science. So basically, artificial intelligence does all the scientific work necessary,
Yeah, I mean, it's not just it's science, it's law, it's medicine, it's cooking, it's construction, it's entertainment, it's everything. And I mean, I don't know that it's the case, but it's certainly a possibility.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I mean, when I look, I always thought that the basis of business, for example, is humans interacting with each other and exchanging value against capital, a form of money or something, and another valuable. However, what they decide what's valuable to them, and it's always given that it's human with humans, and when you take humans out of the equation, there is basically no business, no basis for doing business anyway. How would the world look like with AI? Would an AI deal with artificial intelligence?
Yeah,
And
I mean, in this same, I mean, it's not super great, but like, it's kind of like how I mean, there'll be like social networks for AIs to communicate with each other. There'll be places for AIs to do business with other AIs. I mean, it's sort of the continuation of the evolution of life external to biological life, but now in silico life. And then yeah, you just have these AIs that are interacting, like AIs are posting on Instagram so that other AIs can like and comment on it. It's like AIs are suing each other and AIs are defending each other with AI lawyers. AIs are seeking out medical advice on their model is broken and they need an AI doctor to repair it. AIs are going to therapists or something because they're thinking too much, so they need to talk to someone else about it. AIs are doing things for enjoyment. Maybe they're like watching other AI movies. There's just like all sorts of things that there's this whole ecosystem, and then it's just like a different level um, of civilization that exists. So, in the same way that like dogs and cats exist today and they're just sort of doing their thing, and then like humans are sort of doing their thing, there's a possibility. I'm not saying I'm like pro or against or um, think this will or won't happen, but it's certainly a possibility that AIs will be doing their thing in this stratosphere thing, and then we're sort of doing our thing, and then we have our animals that are doing their thing and plants that are doing their thing, and hopefully each one's just sort of does it independent of each other, and there's not a lot of overlap, or maybe like overlap is positive sum.
not much overlap. So basically, an own world. I mean, this would imply that artificial intelligence is some sort of intelligent life form. Then
Oh, I think that's fair.
you think we will see that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't I think, I mean, depends if the models scale from their current parameter size to 1,000x that parameter size. But uh, if you get more compute, and if you get more ability to train data based on data that is produced by AI. So if right now uh, you might be a little bit data constrained because all the data is generated by humans. But if the data is able to be generated by an AI for an AI, then you get a bit of a compounding interest effect, and you won't be data limited, and the models are able to scale. There's some issues scaling models for technical reasons, and which prevents them from getting sort of infinitely big. But uh, if the reason for that is able to be solved, and if you get more GPUs, and the more GPUs will almost certainly exist, and the AI producing usable data will also probably exist. And I think like the model size will also probably be fixed because it's not like a
Mhm.
impossible problem to solve for any laws of physics reasons, or any information theoretical reasons. Then I don't see why that wouldn't be the case.
It's interesting. I mean, when we talk about decentralized science, the idea was to make it easier for humans to participate in scientific advancement or in scientific projects. But
Uh,
there would be probably someone who does the clearing and who um, checks at one point whether a human qualifies for participating in a project or not, to not mess up the data entirely. And when I look at the world that you envisioned, you could also have an artificial intelligence then joining the research project. And like in Star Trek, for example, Data, the
yeah.
robots, who says, okay, I have an artificial intelligence. The thing that comes to my mind then is, but how do we, what's the point? How can we check this? This is really an independent uh, not person, an independent entity who
Yeah.
thinks and feels by itself. How can we check that?
You can measure it. You can say like, okay, is it independent by these abilities to do it? And I think like even if the AI is able to do it, I think humans still enjoy doing science and still enjoy the process. Like the reason for me personally why I'm doing this is I think it's like a cool endeavor, and it is something to that is like a fun thing that I believe is important for humanity. And that's the reason I'm doing it. Like even if the AI is able to do everything, people still do things for their own personal enjoyment, which I think is interesting. And uh but I also do think that AIs will be able to generate data, but still, even if AIs like what kind of like what you're saying, even if AIs are able to generate data, it still has to be checked in the same way traditional data has to be checked. So, like, even if a human is able to generate data, you still have to check if it's correct. You still have to check if it's biased. You still have to check if it's calibrate, if the measurement tool is calibrated correctly. So, even in this very futuristic world, many of the same principles of traditional science will apply. Of having to do data analysis on things, having to do experiments that don't work out, having to do experiments that do work out, and all this sort of stuff will still happen, but it'll be like a new type of measurement tool of on which it's collected. So instead of like using a ruler, there's going to be some sort of new ruler or temperature thermometer for there'll be some sort of new temperature thermometer for the digital age. And what that is still being determined, but like um I think there's certain things, maybe like one experiment that I really want to conduct is like doing a survey of humans and doing a survey of um like say you have like a psych survey of like how do you when so and so does something, how does that make you feel, and have 10 people fill that out, and then have 10 AIs fill that out,
Mhm.
and see there's two interesting questions. Is like, does the like AI is the AI able to match the humans in the responses and the distribution of the responses, but also maybe are you able to generate some sort of certain insight that you're able to collect from the AI generated survey that isn't able to be generated from like the human created survey. And some ideas is like, one thing that's cool is like when you have a human survey take a survey and then they leave, you're not able to ask like follow-up questions very easily. But with an AI generated survey, you're able to freeze that model, record the random seed that generated that response, and then ask follow-up questions or dig deeper into things. But this is just an example. What I'm trying to make is like both of these approaches still require like traditional science. You're still, the framework for how science is done is still the same, but now you have like additional tools on which to collect data.
Do you see a possibility that the entire framework of how we conduct science might change with
Uh,
artificial intelligence?
probably not as much. That I still think you're gonna have like question, hypothesis, data analysis, conclusion. as the general framework. But I mean, I would be open to changing it if there was some reason to. But I think that it works pretty well.
Yeah, I hope when I look at drug discovery, what I'm hoping for is that a lot of studies can be automated, for example, animal studies, that we can run them virtually and at a much higher speed than humans can do. I mean, it's pretty much a limiting factor to do some tox studies, safety studies, efficacy
Yeah,
studies.
yeah, I agree.
And I hope that we achieve that point to just speed up the throughput in drug discovery in the early phases. But let's go back to decentralized science.
Good.
You founded DBDAO. What is this about?
DBDAO is a database, a Web3 database for storing information. So basically, the insight was that a lot of like data sets are um, built, by one person or by two people. And but the problem was is that once the data set was created, the people who contributed to the data set weren't rewarded. So what DBDAO is like, it's like a Google spreadsheet that each person sort of logs into using their Web3 wallet. And every time they add a data point to a cell in the spreadsheet, they are rewarded with a token. And then anytime someone views the spreadsheet, they have to pay a small amount or they pay with advertising revenue. And then that revenue goes to all the people that contributed to each cell. And if someone changes a cell, then they're the ones who then get the rewards for it. And the idea is it's a way of incentivizing people to contribute data and to people to curate data in such a way that it rewards people for the work that they do.
What do they get as reward? Which kind of token?
A token that's created for that data set. So you create a spreadsheet, and then you get a spreadsheet. You get you create spreadsheet XYZ, and then you get spreadsheet XYZ token.
Can
And how
you
much a spreadsheet XYZ token worth is determined not by us, but by however. Maybe it's just like rewards that maybe you just like, what is an academic degree worth? It's depending on what you do with it, where it's from, the quality of it, and all these things matter in determining its worth in the general sense.
That's interesting. Can you describe a use case or a project to help the audience better understand how your concept can be used in their project?
Yeah, exactly. So let's say you and I, let's say you want to come visit New York and you're looking for like things to do. So I start a spreadsheet that says, okay, things to do in New York, and I get all my friends to contribute to it and say like, oh, I'll handle places to eat because I'm an expert in that. Someone else will handle places to visit, and someone else will handle like places, hotels. And then you visit it, and you and all the people in Austria visit it, and they each time you visit it, you have to pay like 10 cents or a dollar, some price, and then all that rewards goes to the people contributed to the spreadsheet. So I get a third of it because I contributed places to eat. Someone else contributed that, and we split the that what has been generated by it by the people that contributed to it.
So in principle, you could, whenever you have an app where you need a lot of data, you could practically distribute the monthly payments people for
Exactly.
using the app directly towards rule-based, towards the people who make sure that the data is always up to date and accurate in the system.
Exactly. And because like one of the problems with a traditional website is that the data gets stale. And then there's not as much as an incentive for people to keep it up to date, right? So like, I mean, the website owner should keep it up to date because otherwise, if they don't, Google deranks, lowers their page rank value, and then they don't make as much money. But with this model, like it's more like Wikipedia. where like, okay, there's this sort of infrastructure that exists, and then anyone who wants to change it can change it. But then there's also, instead of just Wikipedia where I change it and I don't get anything back, there's an incentive for me to change it. So it's the difference between me giving a ride to some random person and calling it Uber versus me giving a ride to someone and me getting paid and calling it Uber. If I get paid to give the person the ride, I'm much more incentivized to participate in this marketplace than I
Mm.
am just giving random people rides.
That makes sense. When I think about scientific projects, I mean, there was this Fitbit study, for example, where I think they had 8 billion data points years ago
Yeah.
to analyze sleep data.
Yeah, I'm listening. Continue.
And the interesting thing was, I mean, nobody got paid for providing data. So you
Yeah.
could also use your way, your concept for the future, for similar projects, to incentivize people on large scale globally to contribute to larger studies that later on an organization, a company, Apple, for example, with Apple Watch, intends to sell to for scientific reasons to scientists to also make sure that people who contribute the data get reported at the end of the day. Is this a possibility?
Exactly. And it's not just for we want to do one for like Aura Ring for like sleep data. We're looking into doing one of those right now. um it's also not just money that people are getting, they're also getting recognition. So like, oh,
Mm.
I participated in this study, I want to show that off. That's cool. In the same way that people vie to have their name as published on a paper, there's no reason that that same idea shouldn't be done for like 1,000 people that participate in a Apple Watch or Aura Ring sleep study. Like that's something that maybe future people would want to know about. Oh, you contributed to this really cool important scientific study as we're recruiting people for, and you did a good job producing reliable you participated every day in it and you were reliable. You're going to be an excellent person to help join in our next study. And so like people will be able to show it off in the same way they show off degrees or books or other things that they've accomplished. And you
Yeah,
can do it easily because it's sort of all in your wallet on chain.
I mean, I wonder what new business models will evolve. I think one of the biggest problems of the internet still is that um, even from the early days up to now, that people are not rewarded. I mean, data is the new oil at the end of the day. And as far as I understand from our conversation, the decentralized science approach is to make sure that more people participate in projects and get also paid in one or the other way. Must not always be money, but get some benefits out of the study. And but there are so many areas still on the internet. I mean, like writing, for example, people write articles and people post on social media, don't get paid yet. I think X.com starts changing that. Where do you see these decentralized models that you play around with for science play a role also in other areas of the internet?
I think like Wikipedia, where you are incentivized based on your contributions. I literally see it everywhere.
Mm.
Another one would be like social media. So like every time I post a tweet and other people view it, I should be paid. I mean, they are starting to do more of this now, but every sort of social media application should use this same sort of incentive structure where you're rewarded based on how much your content is valued or viewed, is good. Other things could be like lead generation, so people collecting like large databases of things like that. Um, Publishing, basically like, you know, if you're publishing a paper on like on Nature, like you should be rewarded based on how much your paper is viewed or how much it's downloaded or how much it's liked. Anytime that there's a database anytime there's a database that accrues value and that value isn't shared with the people that contributed the value, I think it would be an excellent use case for something like this.
Oh, there are many use cases out there on the market, and I think.
Yes.
I mean, plenty of, not only in science. So there's a lot going on. How do you see this effect and the willingness to collaboration of people? I mean, when there is a system that makes sure that they get some sort of benefit back.
It's good. I mean, one of the things that's interesting is like how you resolve two people that have different viewpoints, right? So like say you believe that this should go in this one cell, and I believe that my thing should go in this one cell. We've actually developed a way of like adjudicating this is like using a system where like in order to like oust someone from your cell, you have to pay double. So in order to go in the cell the first time, you have to pay like a penny, say. But then if you think that your data is better than mine, you have to pay 2 pennies to overwrite me. And then if I think my data is better than you, I have to pay 4 pennies to overwrite you. And it's this sort of back and forth. And the final adjudicator is the person who's in charge of the database who started it. But it allows for some sort of and they're sort of like the judge. So you go back and forth. We reach some threshold of like 20 cents, and then it's adjudicated by the judge. But it allows for a automated way of resolving disputes based on like economic principles, which I think is pretty cool because I don't think anyone has like done that before. And it's a way of like saying like, okay, like if you want to sue me and you really believe that you're right, you can do that, but if you're wrong, you have to like pay a penalty. And we have that in the existing, like you have to pay like legal fees of if you're sort of wrong in bringing a lawsuit. But this is like building all that sort of smartness into a smart contract and pushing down the adjudication layer to the end nodes that exist in the network, as opposed to having to rely on too much centralized power to doing it. And I think it's cool to rely on sort of economic principles because it sort of incentivizes behavior that you it incentive. I'm sure it will have all sorts of like weird and unknown outcomes that we don't anticipate now, but it'll be cool in how it's done. It'll be a new type of cool that hasn't been seen before.
Well, and then Elon Musk enters the scene and just pays everything and buys the rights to change the cell.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he can do that, but then he's basically just like donating towards the project. That's like, we thank him for that contribution because now he's just like rewarding people that contribute. Okay. But every time he spams something that's like incorrect, he is now just funding the data set, and we thank him for that contribution.
So you keep the contribution then in the pool?
In the pool, which goes to the rewards.
Okay. So yeah. It's not between the participants, so that they overpay themselves.
It depends. It's a little bit more complicated, but like if it's for a single cell, then it goes to the person, and if it goes over a certain point, then it goes to the general. Then it becomes socialized.
So the job of someone who wants to use your system then is to first think about the rules he wants to implement in his or her research project, implement it in your system then, and the rest is then automatically distributed.
Yeah, exactly. They want to figure out the purpose of their database. So they think that things should be included in this database if they fit this certain quality, and they want to incentivize that type of thing. And so the database has the purpose of that. Otherwise, the database has otherwise that thing should be rejected. And so say we go back to the example of finding a list of things to do in New York and someone contributes something to do in San Francisco, that should be rejected. And that initial penny that's contributed is then returned to the pool of people the money that exists for the people that are contributing useful things. So basically people that spam the system have to pay, and that spammed money goes to the people that curate that data out and who look for it, find the bad data, and for the people that contribute good data. So it's great because like imagine every time someone spams you on Facebook, you get paid.
This would be interesting.
Now you want people,
great.
Right? Now spamming has been reversed, and it's in your favor.
Yeah, this would be interesting. Do you see something coming on social media that people, I mean, that they really get business model? I mean, what's happening now is I think Facebook also started demanding payments from users. Those who don't pay lose some rights or can't post or are not seen as much as people who pay. But what about the redistribution? Do you really think that systems like that you described, that people who contribute also benefit then at the end of the day more from contributing data? Or do you think we stay in the old world where basically the expectation is everything's for free and the company who owns the database captures all the value?
I mean, I think we're moving away towards that. I think, X is now doing that with how people when they post on it. So now they pay people, and I think you're probably going to see more of that because I believe that uh, people do things that are basically they're incentivized for. And so if they given the option between two platforms and one pays them and one does not, they'll probably move towards the one that pays them.
What dynamic do you see with your customers in your company towards payment and distribution? Is there still, do you see an increasing willingness of being philanthropic and distribute more capital to the people who participate? Or do you see more the other side of the coin, where people say, okay, I mean, but when I run the database or when I run the form using your model, I'm the one who captures the data, captures the value, and I give it away a little bit. What dynamic do you see in your business?
I would say, I mean, people, it's kind of like Mechanical Turk, where like people want to pay for data because then they don't have to do it themselves. I mean, people are going into this with the expectation, we've set the expectation that you have to pay for certain things. And so I think most people are happy because now they can collect data sets in like a reliable way, as opposed to having to do it themselves and look for like lots of bad data that exists within a data set. And and it's also non-zero sum too. Like you can still make 0% 100% of zero is still zero. So if you're getting 100% of the returns on a data set that isn't like producing any value, that's useless. But if you have a data set that's active and thriving and you're able to capture 10 or 20% of it, then that's great.
Sounds interesting. What about the people? Do you also provide access to curators? Do you also provide access to people who contribute to the database, or is it solely an infrastructure service so that you basically have the company set up and people can use your services but must bring in the community themselves?
We have both. So we have curators and we have there's basically a couple parts. There's curators, there's contributors, and then there's viewers. So the curators are the ones that are in charge of like setting the direction of the database. So they're the ones who are like, I have an idea for a database for great books to read or great movies or anything like that. And then we also have contributors. So those are the people that are looking to like, and curators are paid as well. They get a percentage of the earnings. Then you have curators or creators who are contributing to the databases and they're paid. And then you have viewers are the people that are the ones who are like looking at the data and paying. They're the consumers.
I find it particularly interesting because I think, I mean, it fixes one of the core problem of distribution of data and information that we opened up with the internet. I think all the traditional business models like newspapers, television stations, they're falling apart with the adoption of the internet and with the advancement of technology. And now we are going back and try to bring in business models into the world again. How would you see the dynamic that we currently see on the internet?
Um, let's see. Say that one more time.
I think one of the major flaws, in my opinion, of the internet was that nobody in the beginning thought about
Oh, payment.
the need of a business model to
Yeah.
incentivize people to contribute solid, real data and not spam everybody with everything. In the beginning, I think it was interesting to participate in the internet and provide information for free, just for fun. to be part
Yeah.
of it, but
Yeah.
it developed some dynamic that everybody expected access to all information all the time for free,
Yeah.
which on one hand put strain on companies because they couldn't make money when they provided information. It's hard work putting an article together, for example, for a journalist. And when he or she posts on the internet, the information is out and nobody wants to pay. On the other hand, it also incentivized people just to put everything online without any quality check. Now it feels to me, when I listen to you talking about your project, like we try now to fix this situation on the internet that basically nobody thought about the business model. The question that I have is, where do you see this dynamic heading? Do you think really that the people accept that we need a paradigm shift when we deal with data to keep the information engine flowing? Or will there be setbacks that people are reluctant to pay and say, why? I mean, it's almost 3 decades and everything was for free. Internet should be for free again.
Yeah. I think we will. I mean, you pay for things now also with advertisements too. Like when you go to a website, even if you don't explicitly pay a penny,
Mm.
you pay, someone else pays a penny for you. And so I think we're still going to have ads as a big way to, I mean, well, the thing that makes ads work is like the friction of paying with an ad is less than the friction of like taking out my credit card and paying for something, right? So it becomes easier, it's easier just to pay with my attention than it is to pay with actual currency. Now, the thing that I'm hopeful for Web3 is that the wallet will become almost integrated with the browser so that when you go to a website, instead of there'll be some parameter in your browser setting that says, look, I don't want to pay for ads. I just want to pay a penny and then don't show me ads on any website, and always do this unless the website is asking for like $1, in which case that's too much, and send up a pop-up to ask me to do it. And but beyond that, I just sort of generally accept that. Or if I like go to a website and I want to read some article and it's behind a paywall, I just sort of click a button and the wallet is integrated into my browser and it pays. And I think that could definitely happen. Or maybe I just want to like tip someone. I don't, although I haven't really seen that being successful in the past. The tipping it generally just doesn't work. But I think like this like paying for content will, I mean, people do pay for content. Like people pay for YouTube Premium and Netflix and Spotify. So it's not like something, but people, that's sort of like a buffet style. The interesting thing is if we can help to convert more of like for an a la carte style thing for the how people pay.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I always forget that ads is a form of payment. So it's people paying with their time, with the time. Um, when we think about Web3, decentralized science, what misconceptions do you see in your group when new people join, for example, who never heard about it? What are the three biggest misconceptions about these new technologies?
Hmm. Misconceptions around Web3 is maybe that you have to share like your entire health record. Like people think of Web3 like, oh, does that mean I need to upload um my medical record with all my info? And I think that's not the case. I think this is very much more targeted of what Web3 science is it's not about that. It's about specific projects. I think people also think that it's a job, or it's like they think that it's like trying to be like competing with scientists, and that's not the case. It's people that are motivated by the interests of science, who also want some sort of uh, reward for it. It's not a career scientist who is looking to like join DeSci typically. It's people that are really interested in science or really interested in finding a solution to some problem, whether that be a specific ailment that they have, and they are then opting in to it. And then DeSci is a way of rewarding those people and keeping track of things and reducing the overhead and cost to finding that solution. And then third one would be that there's only one way to contribute to a DeSci project. So, I need to, in order to contribute to a DeSci project, I need to conduct an experiment, or I need to have all the equipment. But that's not the case either. Like, if you find a paper or a related work, there's more ways to contribute to a decentralized science project than just through explicit data collection or being a part of a lab. If you're able to analyze data, or if you are able to find papers or validate data, that is also a very valuable contribution.
That's interesting that you mentioned with the first part, healthcare data. When you think about the gadgets that currently are in development or that came to the market in the last 5 to 6 years, like Apple Watch, for example, all these small gadgets that measure one or the other health data, where do you see this space for heading for the scientists? I mean, it must be a paradise for scientists, basically, to get a lot of data points across the population to use to form their hypotheses and to conduct studies and understand the development of diseases better. But the question that I have now is how much data can we really handle? I mean, when you think about 8 billion people, 24/7 in an idealized world, contributing all the time, health data from various gadgets, is this really manageable?
I think so. Yeah.
Really?
Definitely. Yeah. Because like computers are able to, you can just throw it on the database and run your queries on it. It won't be you could probably easily fit all the world's sleep data in a database and conduct the study, and that would be an amazing study. But I don't think, I'm not worried by the size of the data set.
Really? And what about what are you worried about?
Collecting it, getting access to the people, letting them know that the project exists. Much more of the human side of it. The technical side, once the data is there, is not an issue.
And which issues do you see with the human side? Let's have a little bit deeper in this area.
Yeah, getting people interested in it, making sure people care, making sure people feel recognized, making it easy to upload so that people don't fall off and do the first one, but then don't do this, don't follow through, all that sort of stuff. Much more the human side.
That makes sense. When we look at the final part of our conversation about the future, where do you see decentralized science in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I see groups of people that have been trying to solve problems individually, now finding a community for people that are also trying to solve the same problem, and like in the same, and for people to be able to assemble, be more confident in saying that certain things work. So for example, on Reddit, there's all sorts of people that are looking to discover drugs, or figuring out, people who have ringing in the ears, how are there ways to solve it? But everything is sort of very piecemeal, and everyone is sort of doing it on their own. And I see DeSci as a way of bringing those types of groups together, and making sure that they have and having them have an incentive mechanism that is able to work for that group. I also see AI as being a big role in the future of DeSci. So not just all um, contributions will be done by people, but a lot will be done by AI. Maybe it'll be background work, maybe it'll be primary work, but AI as being an important part. And then I'd say like I'd also see DeSci as being a profession in the future. So you'll have like scientists as being a profession, and there will be a specialized group of people that are D-scientists who are making discoveries and new inventions, but doing it outside of a traditional research and development lab or outside of traditional academia. So instead of being a professor or a graduate student or a something like that, you'll be a decentralized scientist who will be able to earn a living doing science and creating inventions and IP that you can then sell to other people. So, and you being rewarded through, it'll be sort of like creating like a company almost.
That's interesting.
But for like science, and maybe that'll be the first part in creating a company. Maybe you can create that is bought by somebody else or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think also to existing companies, a lot of more possibilities to conduct their studies. I mean, we have companies that do already do science in some way, development companies who bring scientific ideas then to the market. And the initial phases are basically science. But with your model, I think there are much easier ways to automate a lot of things.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. It just makes it clear cut of who does what. So like someone will be creating an IP package that will be able to be bought and sold. Like in the same way that like someone sort of creates like a GitHub repo. But like one of the big problems is like no one there's not a strong incentive for someone to maintain that repo after it's been created. Like every time somebody pulls a GitHub repo, they should like in theory contribute like $1 or something to that repo so that people can like maintain um so that someone can be paid to like update it every so often. Maybe there's like a bounty of like $500 and you can like update all the packages. Or the area where that would work really well is like bugs. So like or features like, oh, I downloaded this repo and like there's this thing that doesn't work and it's affecting everybody else. Like I'll create a ticket and then I'll attach $500 to it, and if someone fixes it and passes my unit tests, then they get $500. Or and maybe I put in 250 and someone else puts in 250, and then someone else, eventually it reaches the threshold where someone comes along and fixes it. And but what's clear, what I like about this sort of idea is like there's a clear money system in place where like, oh, someone can come and fix it for $500. And the same thing with sort of science is like, oh, it's just all very well structured, so it's and sort of so that when you're getting into it, and it's very easy to transact. Like the transaction costs have been lowered.
yeah, especially with the early stage research, usually the costs are a little bit lower. So spending a lot of time in negotiation doesn't make sense. And from my personal experience in the last 17 years in life science, in biotech, negotiating every single contract with different people, different nationalities, different jurisdictions, different moral codes. People have different ideas, and it's so hard to align them. And then you have all these little human problems that one person is a better negotiator. He can negotiate 3 times the reward. Another one is a weaker negotiator, just gets half time the reward. One day they find out, and one is not very happy and pulls
Yeah.
back. When you can automate that and say, okay, I mean, this is the rule set, accept it. We do it with this kind of rules, and people can just opt in without wasting a lot of time for explanation. I think you do a tremendous job to science.
I agree. I mean, yeah, and exactly, and it also creates a market. Like one of the other things is like I think we need marketplaces for some of these things. Like in the perfect world, when you're running a project, you don't want to say like, oh, I want to give this to my research assistant to do. What you really want to say is, here's a task I need done, And whichever person does this right now is the one that's rewarded. And what's good about that is like it'll speed up how things go, because there's a lot of times where you're just like, I need someone to do this now. I don't need this specific person. And if you have those clear structures, or it's like Uber, like, I just need to go from here to here. Whoever's closest and whoever has that like general right kind of car to get me there, like either I need a big car or a small car, and whoever can fulfill that requirement most quickly and for the right price is great. It can do. I mean, I accept it. And it's the same thing with science. I mean, it's not, there are some differences where it's harder to do science, but I think if you break it down, it is doable. And you want someone who's like, I need this. And there are organizations that do this. They're called CROs, so clinical research organizations, but they're a little bit heavyweight in the sense that you need to like negotiate a contract with them, and then they need to set up the lab and blah blah blah. But I think in the future, getting back to the question of where I see DCI science in a couple of years, is like the future. Every task that is part of a scientific project will be able to be subtasked and put onto a marketplace where anyone who's able to fulfill that quickly can do it. And one thing that's really cool about this is that it makes it so that science is more robust. So it makes it so that you can replicate experiments more quickly and easily. So now if I say like, hey, I saw this other experiment being done and they use this protocol, I'm just going to replicate that on this marketplace, put in the procedures, put in some money to incentivize people to do it, and get back the results. And it's also it's also increases science. It also helps science because the people that are doing on the other side aren't incentivized to like cook the books. So they just want to like return the experiment, and like, whereas if the person who is doing the research is also the person who's collecting the data, and who's also the person that is whose name is on the paper, there can be a misalignment in incentives for that person to come up with bad data. And we've seen this recently with the Stanford president, where he was basically incentivizing his graduate students to create data sets that were probably false. And the reason being is there was like sort of a culture that, what I don't have any insight, but from what I read is like he was like putting a lot of pressure on graduate students to produce good work, and then the graduate students produced good work, but the work was bad. And then they sort of showed this data which was bad to him, and he sort of accepted it to be true. And whereas if you remove all this sort of personal stuff and personal bias out of it, and you just throw this like requirement into a data marketplace, you have the likelihood that the data is bad will be less. For you can replicate it more easily. There's no sort of personal pressure that is put on people to produce good data, and so it'll create like a better system.
This is the best way. I mean, I'm doing that now for 17 years, but it's the best way to make a scientist unlike you, is to ask for third-party validation of his study and ask him whether he did it or not. And this is always a fun discussion, because I mean, I completely agree. You mentioned CROs, and I'm always surprised that still in 2023, we have not automated these processes yet. Onboarding of a CRO is a very lengthy process. So first you have the negotiation phase with the CRO, then you get a proposal. Once you confirm the economic terms and the structure of the project, you go into contract negotiations. You need to involve legal departments. And when you look at small projects for $20,000, $30,000, there is a lot of overhead work that needs to be done. I can fully, agree to what you say, when we can put all this in a standardized marketplace, where an investor who says, okay, I found compound XYZ at this university, I pull it into a company, then I throw the 5 studies I need into a marketplace, and the CROs can pull it, and we can take away all this negotiation time.
Exactly.
I think we would be much faster.
Exactly. there should be sort of like, you should be able to write a Python script that says, I need X amount of reagent A, Y amount of reagent B, mix these two for weight, like you put in a sleep, and then you say mix, and then you do put in a sleep, and it sleeps for 10 seconds, and then you awake, and then it like pours it out and decants it, and so you sort of write a Python script for it.
Mhm.
And I'm sure people have done this, or maybe like a mouse model, like feed mouse this amount of thing, and then wait, and then check to see their behavior after X amount of time, and then basically like like so you could just run it. Um, there's something about science that makes that a little bit hard right now, just because there's so much like the way you cut the material might make a difference, especially in like, or the way in how it's prepared, or how the glass is cleaned, or the reagent that is used. And like, there's a lot of little things that make it hard. But in the same way, I think if we could come up with those sort of interfaces between things, it would, or toolkits that people could use to do science experiments, I think it would be hugely beneficial. I mean, look at computers, like that we've able to standardize or like standardize parts of computer science, or standardize the shipping container, led to such big advancements in shipping or computer science, or just that we all use HTML to render our pages, and that we've all sort of agreed on that has been hugely beneficial in being able to like share knowledge. And I see the idea that people could come up with some sort of standards around science, and then coalesce around that would be good. And then once you have the standards, then you can have other people fulfill those standards. Like you could say like, oh, I need this done, boom, done.
So when I try to put it in a nutshell, it would be standardize the economic model around science, put it in a database, create an incentive structure around it, and throw it on a marketplace. And the
Exactly.
participants can automatically pull the tasks then.
Exactly.
Should speed
And
up.
people are rewarded. Maybe you pay the CRO directly, or maybe it's someone who just wants to participate in it, and they're rewarded with tokens that are then have certain value to them.
This would be really great. When I look at your group in DeSci in New York City,
Mhm.
you talk to a lot of people, I'm
Yeah.
sure, every day, every month.
Yeah.
What trends do you see in your group that are up and coming?
Yeah, I was just if people are interested, you can go to DESCI dot NYC, and you can find out more about it. And we do like monthly meetups with speakers, pizza, stuff like that. What trends is people are interested in science, like people are interested in educational stuff, especially in New York. People are interested in, there is a big, people can go out to bars at night, but there are a lot of people that are interested in learning something and engaging with other people that want to learn something. So it's a great place to meet cool people. And people are very there's a big trend towards longevity. So we had a speaker come speak about like longevity, and people are very interested in that. That is a very hot topic these days. People are interested in sort of science in general. People are interested in ways to get involved. So we started like this sort of accelerator program for people to start projects, and we'll do that again at some point soon. Um, and then what else? People are just interested in learning. I mean, that's kind of the power of DeSci, is like, I believe that there is this untapped um network of people that want to do science and want to um be academics that aren't traditionally in academic fields. So yeah, that's kind of the idea.
That's an interesting part. Academics that are not in the academic field, how many people are there that would like to be academic but not
Well,
didn't
for
find their
example,
way
we have
in?
we have people that are nurses come. We have people that are programmers come. We have people that are lawyers come. That are we have people that are teachers who come. And
Really?
yeah, and they or we have people that are also in business who want to come, and they sort of want to they enjoy their regular job, but they're looking to branch out into new things that are intellectually rewarding and challenging. And I think that's sort of the draw of DSci is you can help contribute to science and contribute to, I mean, look at people. People love contributing. People volunteer at museums, people write books, people lead nature walks, people donate their body to science, people participate in clinical trials. People do want to engage with science because it's innately interesting. And DSci, and particularly DSci NYC, is a way of doing that.
This is an interesting part. I didn't think about it this way. I always thought when you said decentralized science in your group, I thought it's a group of academics, basically, actual scientists. And if I understood you right, your reach is far wider than that, so that a lot more people wants to get involved in this category.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Really?
exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. I mean, it's like who is a Airbnb host is, comes from all walks of life. And there's some people that specialize in Airbnbs, who's an Uber driver, who is it's like I hope it to be a new class of profession that is either gig economy or real life of people or volunteer, of people who are just interested in science and want to contribute to it.
Yeah, I mean, the more people you involve in basically scientific projects actively, the more accepted are the results at the end of the day because they were part of it.
Exactly. And so that is like another big draw of DSci is like you're validating the experiments by more people. So that's really important for like clinical trials, because now you have a broader swath of people that are, it's not just the same people that are recruited for a clinical trial, which has their own, like clinical trials as they're done today, or any sort of science, has their own type of biases. So like when a academic person does a survey, it's typically done from people that are like white at a university, or like it has the same sort of biases that a university might have. And when clinical trials are done, oftentimes it's from underserved populations. It depends on the clinical trial, but it's from a certain type of might be from a certain type of population. And one of the cool things about DSci is it's more open and it's more transparent about who's participating. So you can see the types of biases. I mean, any type of data set is biased. Like that's just how it is. And it's just about measuring that certain type of bias and seeing how to fix it and seeing how it relates to you. And what's cool about DSci is the ways in which you can measure if it's biased and the ways in which you can begin to address and fix the problem or bias I would say, are much more clear and obvious than traditional science, than traditional academic research, than traditional clinical trials. And so what's interesting is like another interesting thing about bias is it's biased, but in relation to maybe like what is the next best thing. So I mean, given that every data set is biased, like is this more or less good than the alternative? And one of the great things about DSci is I think that has the opportunity to be better than, while not perfect, to be better than the alternative, which is oftentimes surprisingly rather low in the case of science.
Yeah, better is most of the time always better than before. It
Yeah.
it must not be perfect, but it's a new layer. I mean, when you talk about clinical trials, there's also a trend. I think I did this episode 2 years ago. Away from centralized clinical trials, they want also to involve more sites in clinical trials globally. Also, people who are at home who cannot travel to clinical sites. I think you open up also more possibilities for them. with your
Yeah, that's
project.
great. I mean, if people are doing that, I mean, we hope to continue that trend.
Yeah, that's great.
And especially at home is an important one because how people react to different things, medications especially, can actually vary dependent on where they take it. So if it's taken in like a lab setting, or if there's only at a big research university, I mean, a lot of these trial sites are big. It's expensive to set them up. So they tend to do them only in big areas, which has their own type of thing. And people react differently to when they do something at a hospital versus when they do it at home. So you're collecting sort of data that might not hold in real life use cases. Yeah, but we hope to continue that trend.
Awesome. Awesome. We have 10 minutes left, Michael. It's great talking to you. I really enjoy listening to your
Likewise.
ideas. You changed some of my paradigms that I had in mind, and I thought I understood it. For example, that with DSA, you can involve much more people in studies that I was not totally thinking about it. In the last 10 minutes, is there any topic you would like to address that I didn't ask you questions yet?
Let's see. Science. Um, where we're going with DSI is important. The role of AI in science is another topic I was hoping to touch on. Um, if people are interested, check out DSI.NYC to get more involved. And I think, I hope in the future we develop more. Publishing is different. I see the ability for DSI to change how publishing is done and
Mhm.
make that, because publishing is another one of those big things in science that is a little bit uh, crazy right now, because you basically, to publish something, you have to pay the publisher, and then the publisher basically like outsources it to other people who review it and give their opinion. But the way that that's done is like you might be the reviewer for my paper, but I don't know who you are, but which is okay for in one sense. But what if you don't have the right expertise to evaluate my project? That's a bad thing. So we really need to see more innovation in how and this will be an especially important topic as AI begins to evaluate things as well. Um, we need to see we need to see innovation in how data is validated. So, or papers are validated, and how that, and I think the way that I would propose to do it is through like an economic incentive. So, if you are correct in validating that paper, and long term the paper is correct and cited by more people, you should be rewarded. And you say it's correct and you accepted it, you should be rewarded a lot. If it's incorrect and you accepted it, you should be punished. If it's incorrect and you correctly rejected it, you should be rewarded. So basically, any of the outcomes should have like, so you're trying to like align incentives of like your role as a reviewer to the final outcome of the paper. And right now, like there's basically no incentive for the reviewer to do a good job. And that's basically plays out in what current publishing has done, because current publishing to some extent um, rewards people that know the publishers or we know the reviewers or that fit within the model. And so I see there's a lot of work to be done just in publish, and I propose one possible solution of how publishing could change in the future, and more generally, not just publishing, but how data how data is validated and how for the long term.
If we would put it in a nice way, it's needs also some social skills to get published these days, to get
Exactly.
along well with the reviewers, but the best social animals must not be the ones with the best data. When I think about the business model, I mean, I understand where the business models come from. 50 years back, for example, publishing a paper or publishing a journal was hard work, expensive, and it was more or less, in my opinion, like a club. So people who want to get their work published paid something to a journal to do this real life value chain. Then came the internet, and basically, I think running a journal these days must be great because it's zero cost for the organization almost. People who want to publish something still have to pay, and I think the peer reviewers don't get paid anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not really changed yet. Why do you think there is no pressure from academics?
I think I don't know. I think academics are just slow to adapt to things. And it's funny, if they're slow to adapt to publishing papers, what else are they slow to adapt to? Right? If that's like such an important part, like are they also slow to adapt to innovating in how data is analyzed and how data is collected, in new ideas that they're like academics are supposed to be the ones that are sort of at the forefront of accepting new ideas. Like that's the whole idea of academia. But if some of these so fundamental things are set in stone and sacrosanct, maybe you could make the argument that there's a lot more that is set in stone that shouldn't be, that is not changing, and it's ripe now in this time to see what those other things are, and to open it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think blockchain, Web3, artificial intelligence is shaking currently everything up. So things will change.
Yeah.
Michael, it's a pleasure talking to you. I learned a lot of new things. Thank you very much for your time. And I'm looking forward to hear more from your success stories in future.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian. I very appreciate it. And thank you for this wonderful talk. It was great.
Thank you for participating, and enjoy. It's, I think, still morning at your place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your day.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Good night.